The United States could lose a war with China or Russia. That according to a new report commissioned by Congress. This deep look at our national defense strategy finds the U.S. military has potentially lost its edge when stacked up against global powers. It's the most technologically advanced member of the Navy's fleet. As part of a growing defense budget, the USS Zumwalt is a stealth-capable guided missile destroyer with a price tag of some $4 billion.
The stronger we are, the less chance we have of having to go to war.
The president is touting the increase as the largest military budget in U.S. history, at least 4 times the size of China's defense budget and more than 10 times that of Russia. But a new report to Congress shows signs of an eroding military edge, warning the U.S. could lose a war against powers like China or Russia.
It's a real dire warning. This is a flashing red light.
John Hanna is the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney.
The United States risks real strategic insolvency and the danger that we could lose regional wars in critical theaters of operations.
Defense Secretary James Mattis said he was humbled by the largest defense budget in history. Now, it sounds like it might not be enough.
I hope we can avoid an arms race. The challenge we face right now is that the Army is as small as it's been since the Second World War. The Navy is, I think, on track to be smaller than it has been since the First World War. And the Air Force is the smallest it's ever been.
Eric Edelman is the co-chair of the National Defense Strategy Commission. The bipartisan report to Congress warns that available resources for every branch of the military are clearly insufficient if the U.S. were to fight a global power and deter other enemies simultaneously.
Our technology is far superior to anybody else. Our jet fighters, even our tankers, but our planes, our ships, there's nobody that makes the equipment like we make it.
But that equipment comes at a price. While rising global powers have invested heavily in new high-end capabilities, American interests have concentrated on a different kind of fight. As the U.S. military trained its fire on terrorism wrought by violent Muslim extremists in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Syria for the last 15 years, China and Russia have been busy developing highly sophisticated military weapons, like this Russian hypersonic Kinzhal missile.
No missile defense system will be able to withstand it.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says it can carry nuclear warheads and hit targets over 1,000 miles away at speeds 10 times faster than the speed of sound.
Now we have new kinds of technologies coming online that are going to change things up a bit: hypersonics, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, things like that.
Another new report from the Government Accountability Office warns there are no existing countermeasures to defend against these hypersonic weapons. Experts say the American military needs to redirect.
China's military budget is likely to double by 2030 and certainly at least double again by mid-century. At that point, it would be larger than today's U.S. military budget.
Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution says if China's economy keeps growing, so will its military. And they're not the only problem.
Russia, first of all, is not going to overtake us, but they may have enough to be a big problem anyway. They've got 5,000 nuclear weapons, just like we do. They have conventional superiority in regions where we have allies we are sworn by treaty to defend. So they're big enough to be a problem. And even if their budget's only 1/10 of ours.
Despite Russia's relatively small defense budget, its nuclear arsenal remains a threat.
Nuclear deterrence is tricky because what matters is not what we think would deter somebody, but what they think.
Edelman, an American diplomat and former defense official, warns that both Russia and China are investing in new nuclear weapons and delivery platforms.
We've grown very complacent about this because since 1945 nobody has used nuclear weapons in anger, and so I think there's a tendency to think no one will ever do this.
With the exception of North Korea and Iran, no armed state is likely to launch a premeditated attack. The most imminent worry for experts we talk to is the cyber realm.
Cyber attack has the potential appeal of incapacitating us without killing anybody immediately or directly. If the electricity grid goes down, a lot of Americans will die.
Even if the U.S. were to retaliate, A country like Russia is less susceptible to cyber attacks.
Russia might decide that all we're going to do is cyber attack them back. It's one thing in the heat of the moment to punch back against somebody that just hit you. It's something else if it takes a year or two. So maybe Russia's theory of victory would be the Americans will lose heart if we can just slow them down.
Experts we talked to say there's huge uncertainty as to whose tools are better in the cyber realm. Even at a historic $716 billion, the U.S. still spends less on defense in terms of GDP than under Ronald Reagan. So if we want to keep our edge against Russia and prevent China from outspending us, the U.S. has to decide now whether to increase an already staggering military budget. John Jessup, CBN News, the Pentagon.